I think for sure that is the case because the US accounts for a quarter of the world's economy. It's the largest cumulative carbon emitter in the world, and we need their push to deal with climate change. Climate change requires multilateral action, and if the biggest economy in the world suddenly pulls out their might and their effort, then obviously the momentum for the rest of the folks gets a little bit weaker. But having said that, I think that there is still a lot of momentum that is built up. And I think as a result of that, there should continue to be, I think, enough of a push. And I think also within the US, we all know that, we've gone through 4 years of a Trump presidency already in the past. So we know how to work around it, with the states in the US and so on. So I think there are workarounds, but certainly it's going to take a step back. And especially now with Trump pushing fossil fuels and dialing back a little bit on clean energy, all of that changes the dynamic. I think that judicial reform is an important aspect. Enforcement of contracts is still very delayed. We are in the courts on various change in law, contracts, and so on. Those take forever to clear up, right? And it is the system that we have right now. So how can we look at reforming some of those areas? I think the second thing that is also very important is how do we continue to build the infrastructure of the country? We've done a pretty good job so far in the last few years, but obviously India is a massively growing country. And we are still at the beginning of that process. I think over the next 22, 23 years towards Viksit Bharat in 2047, and if as the Prime Minister's target is to make India a developed country, we need to continue to work on infrastructure very significantly over the next 22 years. And that hopefully then brings down the logistics cost, which is so high in India, and is actually therefore becoming a drag for manufacturing. So there are all sorts of attendant, benefits that then begin to emerge from some of these continued reforms. And frankly, I think what's happened is that because India has been on a certain trajectory over the last 10 years, when you come to places like Davos, we were talking about why the impact of India is going up. It's going up because India's economic heft is increasing. We are now the 5th largest economy in the world, but we all know that in 2 or 3 years from now, we'll become the 3rd largest economy in the world. 20% of future growth of the world is going to come from India, right? So as all of that happens, people will start going to India for accessing that growth. And I think if we can do some of these things to make the ease of operation easier and bring down the cost of operation as well, that is then going to lead to a win-win for obviously India and Indians on the one hand, as well as foreign investors on the other hand, and domestic investors as well. The other thing I think that is also required is we need to invest in education. We need to get more employable people out there. We need to get more trained engineers on things like AI if we have to take advantage of it, right? So I think that's another big area that we can potentially focus on. And to come to the point of clean energy specifically, India's energy demand is likely to grow at about 4 to 5% a year. Energy demand, which is the umbrella for electricity. Electricity is only a quarter of energy in totality. Now, as that happens, we will also see a shift towards electricity within energy. And within electricity, you'll see a massive shift towards renewables. When you do the math on all of these numbers, we require almost 3,000 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2047, which means that the target that we have currently of getting to 500 gigawatts by 2030, that target has to be replicated every 3 to 4 years after that for the next 15 or 20 years. And that will require an investment of $3 to $4 trillion over the next 20 years. These are very significant numbers. And we don't have a choice. We have to meet these targets because the country requires more economic growth. We require more power for that. And as Rajiv said, on a per capita basis, our consumption levels are still extremely low. So as we go to the developed country status, or even at the fringes of that, we'll need a lot more energy. So I think it's those kinds of massive investment opportunities in almost any sector that you look at. I'm sure in healthcare as well. Shobna will tell us that our penetration levels of healthcare have to increase so much, and that itself is so I'm thinking almost every sector. And that's really why India is such a great opportunity for entrepreneurs, for investors, and will be for the next 20 odd years. So I think if the government can just get a few of these things, that they just can continue to work on them on a cumulative basis, we would have made so much more progress over the next 15 to 20 years. That will be a whole different country. And then in places like Davos, we'll be the talk of the town even more than we are right now.
So you said that 3,000 gigawatts is what we need by 2047. What is the installed capacity today?
Today, the installed capacity of renewable energy in India is about 200 gigawatts. So we're talking about a 15 times growth rate. And just to put that in context, today the installed capacity in the US of all power generation sources is only 1,000 gigawatts. Okay, and in the US right now, there's so much excitement because of data centers creating demand, and nuclear company valuations have gone through the roof because that's the only way to meet that demand. India is going to have much more demand coming up over the next couple of decades. Yeah. Data centers are only going to be one facet of that demand growth. So it'll be a whole different equation over the next many years.